The rain came down in sheets, hammering the tin awning above the diner's entrance, with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, urgent, relentless, alive. Inside, Jazmine Carter wiped her hands on her apron, the faint smell of grease and coffee clinging to her like a second skin. She was 24, with deep brown eyes that carried a quiet strength and a smile she'd learned to wield like a shield. It was 6:47 p.m., 13 minutes until her shift at Ruby's diner ended, and she was already dreaming of the chipped blue couch in her tiny apartment, a cup of tea, and silence. The bell above the door jingled, sharp and out of place against the rain's roar. Jasmine glanced up, expecting another soggy trucker or a late-night regular. Instead, a small boy rolled in, his wheelchair creaking as he struggled to push himself over the threshold. He couldn't have been more than 5, with wide, frightened eyes and a mop of dark curls plastered to his forehead. His hands trembled on the wheels, and his voice, small, quivering, cut through the diner's hum. "Help," he said. "I'm lost." The room went still. The clatter of dishes, the low murmur of voices. Even the rain seemed to hush for a moment. Jasmine's heart lurched. She dropped the rag she'd been holding and crossed the floor in 3 strides, kneeling beside him. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice a lifeline. "What's your name?" "Eli," he whispered, his lip trembling. "I don't know where my daddy is." That was it. The hook, a child alone, vulnerable, and reaching out into the chaos of the world. Jasmine didn't hesitate. She didn't care that her shift was almost over or that her shoes were soaked from the puddle he'd tracked in. She saw a boy who needed her, and that was enough. Jasmine pulled a chair close and sat at his level, ignoring the curious stares from the handful of patrons nursing their coffee. Eli's wheelchair was scuffed, the kind of wear that told a story of constant use, but it was sturdy, well made. His clothes, a blue jacket and jeans, were soaked but clean, hinting at someone who cared for him. Yet here he was, alone. "Where were you going, Eli?" she asked, brushing a curl from his eyes. He sniffed, clutching a small toy car in his lap. "Home. Daddy said we'd go home after the park, but I rolled away and then I couldn't find him." His voice broke, and Jasmine felt a pang deep in her chest. She knew loss, not the kind that takes a parent, but the kind that leaves you searching for something you can't name. Her own mother had worked double shifts to keep them afloat, leaving Yasmin to navigate the world alone more times than she could count. "Okay," she said, decisive. "We're going to find him together. You and me." She grabbed her jacket from the hook by the counter, ignoring the manager's raised eyebrow. "Clock me out, Ruby," she called. "I'll be back." Ruby, a stout woman with a permanent frown, muttered something about responsibility, but Jasmine was already pushing Eli's chair toward the door. The rain hit them like a wall as they stepped outside, but Jasmine didn't flinch. She pulled her hood up, crouched to zip Eli's jacket, and smiled. "Ready for an adventure?" Eli nodded, a flicker of trust lighting his eyes. That moment, the spark between a waitress who'd seen too much hardness and a boy who needed softness, was the thread that would pull them through the night. The streets of downtown Charlotte were a maze of neon signs and wet pavement, the kind of place that swallowed you if you didn't know where to look. Jasmine pushed Eli's chair, her sneakers squelching with every step, the cold seeping into her bones. She asked him questions to keep him talking. "What's your favorite color?" "Blue." "Do you like dinosaurs?" "Yes, especially T-Rexes." And pieced together what she could. He lived by the big water, he said, and his daddy had a tall house. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The park Eli mentioned had to be Marshall Park, a few blocks away. Jasmine headed there, her mind racing. How does a 5-year-old in a wheelchair get separated from his father? Why hadn't anyone called the police? She glanced at Eli, his small hands gripping the toy car like it was his anchor, and felt a surge of protectiveness. She'd figure it out. She had to. The rain eased to a drizzle as they reached the park, its paths slick and empty. Jasmine scanned the area. Benches, a fountain, the lake shimmering under streetlights. "Does this look familiar?" she asked. Eli nodded, pointing a shaky finger toward the water. "We were there, by the ducks." Jasmine's heart lifted. A clue. She pushed him along the path, her eyes darting for any sign of a frantic parent. But the park was deserted, the silence heavy. She stopped by the lake, catching her breath. "What's your daddy's name, Eli?" "James," he said. "James Carter." Jasmine froze. Carter. Her last name. A coincidence, sure, but it landed like a stone in her gut. She shook it off. "Okay, James Carter. We'll find him." An hour passed, then two. They checked the park, the nearby streets, even ducked into a gas station to ask if anyone had seen a man looking for a boy. Nothing. Jasmine's phone battery was at 10%. Her legs ached, and Eli was shivering despite the blanket she'd snagged from the diner. Doubt gnawed at her. What if his father wasn't looking? What if something worse had happened? She knelt beside Eli, brushing rain from his face. "You okay, buddy?" He nodded, but his eyes were glassy, exhaustion settling in. "I want my daddy," he whispered. "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm trying." She stood, scanning the street. She could call the police, but something held her back. A gut feeling that this wasn't a case for flashing lights and reports. Not yet. Eli trusted her, and she wouldn't let him down. A memory flashed. Her mother, bone-tired after a 16-hour shift, still finding the strength to braid Jasmine's hair and whisper, "We keep going, baby. Always." That was the fire in her now. She adjusted Eli's blanket and pushed on, toward the upscale neighborhoods near the lake. "Tall house by the big water," she muttered. It was a long shot, but it was all she had. The houses grew grander as they moved north. Sprawling lawns, iron gates, windows glowing like beacons. Jasmine's arms burned from pushing the chair, but she didn't stop. Eli's chatter had faded to soft hums, his toy car rolling between his fingers. Then at the end of a quiet street, she saw it. A mansion perched above Lake Norman, its silhouette towering against the night sky. Lights blazed from every window, and a figure paced the front porch, a phone pressed to his ear. "Eli," Jasmine said, her pulse quickening. "Is that it?" He sat up, eyes wide. "Yes, that's home." Relief flooded her, sharp and sweet. She pushed faster, the chair rattling over uneven pavement. As they neared, the man on the porch, a tall figure in a dark coat, turned, his face catching the light. He froze, then bolted down the steps, his voice breaking the silence. "Eli! Eli! Daddy!" Eli cried, reaching out. Jasmine stopped, her breath hitching as the man dropped to his knees beside the chair, pulling Eli into a fierce hug. Tears streaked his face, his hands shaking as he checked his son over. "Oh, God, I thought I'd lost you." She stepped back, her chest tight. She'd done it. She'd brought him home. But as the man stood, his eyes met hers, and something shifted. He was older than she'd expected, late 30s maybe, with sharp features softened by grief and gratitude. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice raw. "Jasmine," she said simply. "I found him at the diner." "Jasmine," he repeated like it was a prayer. "Thank you. You don't know what you've done." The man, James Carter, insisted she come inside. "You're soaked," he said, waving off her protests. "Please, let me at least get you dry." Reluctantly, she followed, pushing Eli's chair up a ramp she hadn't noticed before. The house was a marvel. Marble floors, chandeliers, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. But it was warm, lived in, with toys scattered in the foyer, and a photo of Eli beaming on the mantel. James brought her a towel and a mug of tea, his hands still unsteady. "He has cerebral palsy," he explained, nodding at Eli, who was now curled up with a blanket on the couch. "We were at the park. He loves the ducks, and I turned to grab his bag. He was gone in seconds. I've been searching for hours." Jasmine nodded, sipping the tea. "He's a brave kid." "He is," James said, his eyes softening. I'm James Carter. I, I owe you everything. She smiled faintly. Just glad he's safe. He hesitated, then added, I'm not sure how to repay you. I run Carter Enterprises. Tech, mostly. I can... Carter Enterprises, Jazmine interrupted, her mind spinning. The name clicked. The billionaire who turned a startup into a global empire. She'd seen his face on magazine covers, always distant, untouchable. And here he was, thanking her. Days passed. James called the diner, insisting on meeting again. Eli keeps asking for you, he said. Jazmine agreed, drawn by the boy's quiet courage and something she couldn't name in James's voice. They met at the park, Eli feeding ducks while James watched her with an intensity that made her nervous. You're good with him, he said one afternoon. Better than most. I just listen, she shrugged. Kids like that. He smiled, then grew serious. Jazmine Carter. Same last name. Funny, right? She laughed. Yeah, small world. But it wasn't small. It was vast, and it was closing in. One evening, James showed her a photo, an old Polaroid of a young woman with Jazmine's eyes holding a baby. My sister, he said quietly. She died when I was 10. Her daughter, we lost track of her. Jazmine stared, her heart pounding. What was her name? Marla Carter. The air left her lungs. Her mother's name. The pieces slammed together. Her mother's stories of a brother she'd never met, a family fractured by time and pain. You're my uncle, she whispered. The revelation broke them open. James wept, pulling her into a hug that felt like coming home. Eli, sensing the shift, rolled over and grabbed her hand. You're staying, right? He asked. Yeah, she said, tears spilling. I'm staying. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was family, a niece, an aunt, a thread woven back into a tapestry she'd never known existed. James offered her a job at Carter Enterprises, but she shook her head. I'll stick with the diner for now, but I'll be here for both of you. Months later, Jazmine stood in the diner, Eli beside her in his chair, showing Ruby his latest drawing. James walked in, a grin on his face. Thought I'd grab some pie, he said. Family discount. She laughed, her heart full. The rain still fell outside, but it didn't matter. She'd found her light. One night, James handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed to the diner, now hers. Ruby's retiring, he said, and Eli said it should be yours. A place for people like us, lost, then found. Jazmine hugged him, then Eli, her family. The billionaire's gift wasn't money. It was a home, a purpose, a boy's faith in her, and that was everything. Hey, if this story touched you, don't forget to like and share the video to catch the latest ones. Thanks for sticking with Jazmine, Eli, and James all the way to the end.